of the, the NIAT. And we propose to have an inquiry into the efficiency and effectiveness of the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal, with specific focus on the tribunal's capacity really to dispose of appeals and its functionality, in terms of the fact that there was a previous inquiry in 2013, and we would now like to review to see if those goals are met, if the interests of the public would be there to full satisfaction in terms of what the NIAT is about. And officials at this meeting, also other stakeholders, would also be the NIBTT, the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago members, and Ministry of Finance. So I am Dr. Varma Diyal Singh. I'm the chair of this inquiry today. And I want to just remind participants that this is a virtual meeting and certain specific guidelines would apply, including making sure that your microphone is off when you're not speaking, and that you actually would look at the camera to your face is clearly visible. And also please mute your cell phones and any other electronic devices that may cause a little disturbance to the speaker. Members of the listening and viewing public are invited to as they look, they can send their comments via ParlView and YouTube channel and Twitter as the proceedings go on the way. So at this stage, I would like to introduce the representatives from the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal, and I would like to welcome on board the members of this committee. So Mrs. Sharon Hassan Ali, the registrar, is here, and do you mind introducing yourself and your team, please?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Hassan Ali Augustus, Registrar for the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal. And today we have Ms. Stacey Cummings, Attorney at Law. She's the chair for the tribunal. Ms. Naseem Faria, Senior Research Officer, Investments Division. Mr. Prakash Ramlochan, Administrative Officer 2 of the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal.
And I would like the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago, the NIBTT, starting with Mrs. Naila Prasad Pulaya, the Executive Director. Would you introduce yourself and your members, please? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Naila Prasad Pulaya. I'm the Executive Director of the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago. And this morning, I'm happy to have with us today our Deputy Chairman, Mr. Douglas Camacho, our Chief Operating Officer of Business Services, Mr. Fayad Khan, and our Executive Manager, Legal Services, Ms. Sarah Babalal.
Thank you. And lastly, the members of the Ministry of Finance, started with Mrs. Jennifer Lutchman, Deputy Permanent Secretary, acting.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Jennifer Lutchman, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance. With me, I have Ms. Yvette Babb, who is the Executive Director, Investments, Divestments, directly responsible for NIAT.
Thank you, and I give all of you a warm welcome, and I'm hoping we can have a very fruitful and productive morning, because we have a very important role to play for the public out there who need some sort of relief with their pension, for their pension to be expedited in a particular efficient manner. At this stage, I would like the members of my committee to introduce themselves, and I would start with my members, please. If you can start introducing yourself. We can start with the ladies first and go in order.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Morris-Julian, member.
Good morning, Jayanti Lachmadial, member.
Good. And now with the males that are here.
Good morning, everyone. Nigel DeFreitas, member.
Good. Good. So thank you, members, for being here. And At this stage, I would like to say that I think it's very fortunate that we have this meeting today because the public is waiting for some sort of relief, especially in this COVID times, where unemployment, persons have problems really to service their relatives, their family, and they need their any sort of claims to be handled efficiently. I'm a bit disappointed though when I looked at the 2013 report, and I noted that a lot of work went into that report and a lot of recommendations were there. And I'm still seeing some of the same sort of questions are now being asked today. I'm still seeing some of the same inefficiencies are still there. So I'm hoping now with the COVID situation here, with the online platform, I'm hoping somehow we all could get together and create something that will really be beneficial to the public interest, because it's really the public interest that we serve. So at this stage, I would like to invite any of my members, if you would like to start with an open question. But before we do that, I would like the members of the different bodies to at least give us some opening comments on your performance. So I would like to start with Mrs. Sharon Hassan Ali to give us a brief, probably a minute or two, opening comments about your function, and your anything you have to tell us before we start the proceeding.
Good morning again to everyone. My role as registrar to the Appeals Tribunal is an administrative role. I perform the duties of a secretariat to the tribunal in receiving and prepping all of the matters that come through the Appeals Tribunal, liaising with members of the public directly, and setting schedules, dates, times, venues for hearings, notifying all the parties concerned. We have stipulated times set out in the Act for notice of appeals, notice of hearings, and we have to adhere to those guidelines always. So if we are setting a date and a venue, a time for a hearing, whether we do it in the administrative division of North, South, or Tobago, we have to give notice, 21 days notice in advance of the actual date. Those times can change only if the chairman has asked for a specific adjournment or NIB has asked for a specific adjournment. And then we shift those dates to suit. Once we have agreement on a new date, we continue. We try as much as possible to bring relief to members of the public, but this tribunal is a fact-finding tribunal, as the chairman will detail more in her responses. And it is heavily dependent on the appellants and what they can provide in terms of evidence to the tribunal to assist them in their matters. Any matters that would have matters of law, those are referred to the High Court. The tribunal cannot adjudicate on any matters that would hint on law, mixed law, and fact, anything like that. Those must go to the High Court.
Thank you very much. And I see you have a lot of the responsibility of your organization on your hands. You are the main player there, I think, to get things from the tribunal and also get things from the ministry and from also the NIBTT. So it's a heavy duty on your part. And so I thank you for that opening remarks. And I'd please like Mrs. Naila Prasad Pulaya the Executive Director of the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago to please give us some opening remarks.
Chairman, thank you. And this morning, our opening remarks will be by our Deputy Chairman, Mr. Douglas Camacho.
Thank you, Edie. Good morning, all. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for the invitation to attend that was extended to the NIB for this hearing, which is really for the efficiency of the NIAT. It is indeed a pleasure to be here today, that we, the NIBTTT, who are a key stakeholder of the NIAT, and we remain open to the constant and rich dialogue with all relevant authorities. It is very important to note that while the NIBTT plays a pivotal role in the business of the NIAT, the organization must work in conjunction with other stakeholders in the whole appeals process. Particularly pleased to, Chairman, to see that one of our former employees are part of your commission's panel. So hopefully they'll be able to bring some of the insights they would have gleaned while they worked with us here at the NIBTT into the fore here. So thanks again. I mean, we are a participant. Today is really not about the NIBTT, but about NIAT, and we are really eager to participate and to offer suggestions and recommendations on areas where we believe, working in collaboration with one another, we might be able to better serve the needs of the wider public, which I think is the intention of both the NIATT and the NIBTT, to ensure that it is fair, transparent, and meets the needs of the whole population at large. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. And I'm glad you realize amongst our committee, we have a member, but we have two members actually who worked at your organization, because member Morris, I think, was also, Julian Morris was also a former employee. So we have some inside information. So that's good in a sense. It's good for us, I know, so at least we're hoping we can get something done. And at this stage, I would like to invite Mrs. Jennifer Lutchman, the Deputy Permanent Secretary, acting, to please give us some opening remarks.
Good morning again, Chairman and members. The Ministry of Finance's role is to provide support to NIAT in the area of administration and resources. Arising out of the last Joint Select Committee inquiry on the administration and operations of NIAT, the Ministry of Finance engaged the services of the firm Ernst & Young to undertake a business process review of NIAT. On receipt of the report, the Ministry commenced an analysis of the recommendations that the report would have provided, and commenced to undertake implementation of the reports. However, early in 2020, the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance, they assigned a senior research officer to the NIAT to assist in the restructuring of NIAT in order to strengthen the process that the tribunal undertakes. However, due to the onset of COVID-19, we had to put a pause, and discussions were suspended. However, we understand how important the discussion is, to continue to strengthen NIAT, and therefore, very shortly, we will recommence the discussion and the ensuring the recommendations of the report are actioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, it startles me a bit that I'm saying that we had a lovely report in 2013, and yet still we didn't meet any sort of major goals or any sort of, I look at more, matters coming before, and the NIAT, and I'm looking at the fact that even though there's more, the plane of the backlog is a challenge, as well as dealing with the new cases. So definitely, I'm saying that the Ministry of Finance has to look at what transpires, because remember a problem we had with the last committee was the fact of staffing, that they needed more staff. And I think your department is probably very, should be upfront in looking at the staffing for the tribunal, at least to get the efficiency running. But I must say, even though I may appear to be critical, I'm critical because you find that a lot of people out there, the elderly, widowed persons who are waiting, unemployed persons, they are really in a way that they might be suffering and looking for some sort of a relief. So I'm hoping we can do something a little better in terms of the last report. And with the COVID, I'm thinking it has revolutionized the runnings of the Attorney General's office and certain other departments. And there's the Ministry of Information and Technology now. And I'm thinking if we can tap into that, we can most likely be able to have hearings, that could occur at a much greater pace. And even though you have the geographical problems. So I think that some positives could come out with this COVID. And I'm thinking it's really keeping a pace with what's happening out there in other ministries to see if we can also get something going here. And it's not just your organization, because if we recently had a discussion in Parliament for the statutory authorities, and it seems it's the same situation whereby you have plans, but they are not really put into place in such a way. There are a lot of challenges. So it's not just what's happening in this tribunal, but it's really a broad spectrum. And I think we are here to see, look, we're not going to waste time again as the last committee in terms of saying, well, we are here, we are putting our effort. So let's try and see if we can have some benchmark and some goals. So at this stage, I think one of my members indicated they would like to start the opening batting. So I'm thinking it's, I think it's member Lakshmi Dayal, I would recognize that.
Thank you, Chairman. With respect to the Ministry of Finance, firstly, I wanted to find out some more about the legislative amendments and a status update on the legislative amendments that you said were proposed in 2017. You indicated in your submission, on page 2 of your submission, that it was sent to the Investment Division, to the administrative officer. Can we get an update on those amendments, and can you give us some more information on what the proposals were coming from the board, from the NIAT, with respect to legislative amendments, and how those amendments, how the ministry views those amendments, and also an update on the status of it?
Okay. First of all, it was felt that we had to look at the structure of NIAT before we even undertake the legislative amendment, because the reports, as well as the report emanating from Ernst & Young, indicated that certain things needed to happen. One of which there had to be, or there was a recommendation for a deputy chairman. There was also a recommendation for a deputy registrar. There was a recommendation for an alternate to the chief medical officer, to name a few of the legislative amendments that would have been required. So it was felt that we needed to look at the organization structure before we propose the legislative amendment. And this is the conversation that started in 2020, where the structure was being examined, and we will continue to pursue that. One of the actions that we would undertake as soon as we decide on the appropriate organization structure would be to make or to engage the PMCD of the Ministry of Public Administration to provide recommendations based on what we have agreed on so that we could move forward with it. Subsequent to that, we would engage the Treasury solicitor within the Ministry of Finance to determine how best we would undertake the legislative amendments, and we will go from there.
Mm-hmm. So the amendments proposed in 2017 is saying that they are they in line with the recommendations of Ernst & Young? And when was that Ernst & Young report dated?
The Ernst & Young report was dated 2015. Subsequent to the Joint Select Committee meeting, the Ministry of Finance would have engaged Ernst & Young in 2014. Right. And the report was presented in 2015. Mm-hmm. In 2016, we started to look at the recommendations of the JSC and the Ernst & Young report. And staff rotation posed a challenge in continuity, but we felt that it was important to continue, and that's why we started earnestly pursuing that in 2020.
So, I mean, what I'm getting from you here is that we had no earnest action on the Ernst & Young report from 2015 to 2020. Could you just tell us, between 2015 and 2020, apart from receiving recommendations that you referred to here from the NIAT, has the ministry really, apart from, I mean, are we still reading the reports? That's what I'm trying to ask. Is it that? COVID only happened last year, March. So I'm saying between 2015 and 2020, I haven't heard anything really, was there really any action at all?
What we would have done, there were some issues that we needed to fix. The position of registrar, we pursued for the position to become pensionable. That's one of the things that we did.
And what's the status of sorry, hold on. Let's just take it one by one then. So you said that there were some issues that needed to be fixed. You mentioned that one. Has that issue been resolved? The status of registrar?
Yes, it has.
So it's now a pensionable position. So it's been created.
It has. Yes. Right? Yes.
Good. Thanks. I'm just taking notes. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, based on the report of the JSC, accommodation was an issue. At this point, the NIAT is housed at the Ministry of Finance, I believe is level 2. So therefore, we believe that they have appropriate accommodation at the Port of Spain office. There was an issue before where they were moving, from place to place. So now they have a fixed place, and all the security and other amenities that they would have asked for was provided. And it is not that we did not do anything, but we have been having discussions. It's just that it hasn't come to fruition where you have the hard evidence to support things that have, concluded.
I would like to ask one thing before. How much did that Ernst & Young consultation cost the ministry?
Chairman, I can't say offhand because I was not in ministry at that point, but I will definitely provide that in writing to the committee.
Sure, thank you. I would like to ask something there. The amount of staff that presently is assigned to the tribunal, could you tell me how many persons are there? Because I have a flowchart here saying 1 administrative officer assigned, 1 clerk steno 2, 1 clerk 3, 1 clerk typist 1, 1 clerk 1 assigned, 1 messenger, 1 estate. So this flow chart that I was provided with, it actually showed that NIAT has 5 positions on the establishment of the Ministry of Finance as follows: the registrar, the clerk 3, steno 2, clerk typist 1, messenger 1. And what amazes me is that if you all are handling thousands of cases with that backlog, with just 5 persons, my office, I have five of us in my office alone. So I'm wondering, how could you actually service the country? I think it's almost 60,000 pensioners properly if they have appeals with just 5. So something really needs to be done. And I'm asking the Ministry of Finance with this question. Previously, staff was loaned to NIAT. Is it possible that you could at least put members on staff to have them on board with NIAT for at least about 2 years, 3 years, to say you're stationed there, you get to learn the ropes, and let's see if we can clear up that backlog? How difficult is that? And in terms of staff rotation, why is it a need to move staff? Can't you look at that 2-year period that we can get a sort of a guidance within 2 years? We are going to aim at this backlog and new cases. So so if you can guide me in terms of having to wait for Ernest and Young report, which is probably sitting there, probably paid a lot of money for, I think giving staff to those persons is a problem from the Ministry of Finance's point of view to say, hey, we're going to provide you with more staff to kind of expect.
Chairman, the staff, the 5 members of staff are the staff of the Ministry of Finance, but there are other support staff, such as the messenger and so. Definitely we will reconsider the organization structure and the needs assessment of NIAT going forward.
But in the short-term measure, instead of considering it, I'm thinking if the chair of NIAT make a request to you tomorrow, provide us with stuff. Is it a difficult proposal that he can make suggest to say, let us this staff for 2 years, let us try and get rid of it? Is that a difficult thing to do? Is there any things in the way that could prevent your ministry from doing that? Plus, another point, there was in the 2013 report, the Joint Select Committee, actually, there was a consultant from the outside, Mr. Herbert Dolsing, who actually mentioned that he would be willing to work with the tribunal to see if they can somehow expedite their appeals, because as he put it in his letter, and I just would like to just read a little part of it. It is a letter that he had given to the committee in 2013, and he mentioned it is estimated that your board has failed to meet legal obligation under Regulation 15 in about 90% of outstanding appeals. So again, if there's a regulation and if NIB is failing to at least put their files to the NIBT in a matter of 3 weeks, persons out there may consider it as a failure of your duty, of something that is, flouting the regulations and illegality. And thinking that 3-week period was really put in. It sounds very, with the public service and probably with the work ethics, people may think it's a bit, somehow it's like, fantasy to expect that. But the persons who actually put that in realize that the public out there need their money, the elderly person who's retired and dependent on certain things. And I think they put that 3-week period there as in the regulation to best serve the public. So I'm looking at Mr. Dolsing's report where he actually which he said that in the circumstances, I wish to recommend that you meet with the relevant authorities, which I guess the Joint Select Committee has done. But closing, he said that I am willing to assist the panel if required for the primary purpose of relieving the pains and the sufferings of the appellants and to establish the tribunal operational once more. So I'm suggesting, is it difficult to hire out consultants to come in to help you, consultants who are out there advising the public, as well as your in-staff to put them to help this the tribunal?
Thank you, Chairman. So the Ministry of Finance would have assigned some staff. Well, I believe there was an AO2 that the ministry assigned to NIAT to provide assistance. The Ms. Hassan Ali would be able to advise on that further. But definitely consideration would be given to consultancies, of course, within the confines of the resource constraints that we now face.
Through you, Chairman, and I'm going a little lower on staffing issues level, Ms. Lutchman, right? I was one of those, at the time, young women who came in with the data-driven aspect of the National Insurance Board, and at no point did they touch NIAT, meaning that we did not input any data for appeals, etc. I want to ask about, with regards to your staffing issues again, and besides from the board level, what is being done at the lower level regards to staff? Could you let me know how many people work with the committee to assist you?
Mr. Morris-Julian, good morning. Is that question posed to me?
Yes.
All right. NIAT, as the chairman rightly said, has core staff of 5 that has been on the establishment since NIAT came into existence, and with the aid of the AO2 assigned to us and a CLAP 1 currently, that is our core staff. Prior to the AO2 that is in a unit coming in, we had OJTs and the clerical assistants, and by the very nature of their employment, that would have been short too. So the OJTs may have come in to finish whatever part of their OJT stint that they had. They completed it here in NIAT, and the clerical assistants would have been here 6 months until they left the ministry. So that has been what...
So that, sure you again, Chairman. So that would definitely affect your the constant moving of staff. The changing of staff will definitely affect your output at some level. Now, I must say that working at your institution was one of my more enjoyable work experiences. So I know that there's a opportunity for growth, for more permanent staff members to move up in the organization. And it's quite troublesome to hear that you have to rely so heavily on OJT, and people will be in and out when you really need institutional knowledge to help build up your particular arm, correct?
Correct.
Yes, I see there's a lack of institutional knowledge, and I'm thinking this is why I'm looking at the fact that if we want to somehow get things going quickly and we could get a commitment like 2 years, we're going to have, even if you get OGTs and you see a fix here for 2 years, or staff from the ministry coming in for a 2-year period to say, our prime purpose is to expedite some of the backlogs. I'm thinking we can make a little headway in this. Commitment from the finance ministry to give that staff hiring out as a consultants who are willing to come on board, and also the OGT there who could be trained to say let's get this. But remember, criticism that was made from that first letter I read was from the NIBTT in terms of their their delay, their tardiness in bringing files, because you see if the tribunal has filing, and the mandated time is 3 weeks, and sometimes it takes a year or more to get those files. This is something we have to see how we could improve that. So I'm hoping someone from the NIBTT could at least give me an idea of what is the, what is holding back that. I know there may be plenty of reasons where you may have to look at certain files or where people worked and get information, but the idea is once you get that 3 week mandated period, I'm thinking if it is not coming for the tribunal, we are waiting since 2013 for this. We may have to reach a stage, well, if an appeal comes to the NIBTT, the tribunal, and you are waiting for this file, could the tribunal on its own decide, well, if you are not forthcoming with it, we're going to hear this matter in favor of the appellants? So that's two questions. One to the, I'd like to direct one question. The first question to anyone in the NIBTT in terms of the delay in carrying it. And the second question I'd like to direct to, in terms of a delay comes in and it's lasting long, you're waiting for this after a period, 3 weeks or a reasonable period, 3 months. Could we now say, well, we are waiting too long, let's just dismiss this and go in favor of the appellant? And that would be directed to the someone in the NIAT. Okay, thank you.
Chairman, if I may, before I actually hand it over to the ED, I think it would be interesting to look at the numbers, and maybe the numbers tell the story. If one were to reflect on the number of matters which have been adjudicated upon over the last, even if you take the last 5 years, I think you had used 2015 as some report in one of your comments. The total number of matters heard, over the last 5 years aggregates to about 138. The interesting part about that is the outstanding matters that have not yet been heard. And I mean, just listening to this dialogue today, I realize staffing is obviously a major issue that needs to be addressed at the NIAT. Is probably in the region of 1,000 plus, possibly in the region of 1,500 unheard matters. And those matters may date back way more than the 5 years in this conversation. Because if on average, let's just take an average of 150 to 200 claims are made per year. And if you take the 140, 138, 140 in the last 5 years as an average, you're probably talking less than 30 out of every new 200, 150 to 200 that are coming forward. All we're doing is increasing the backlog. We can't even handle, it would seem, based on the resources available at the moment to the NIAT, to handle the existing requirements where files are available and in the hands of the NIAT. So I think I'll hand over to the NIB to talk about the efficiency improvements to get files in on time. But while we get in files in on time, remember, Chairman, that to get more files in faster, when we can't handle the 1,500 outstanding for the last, 10 years or however long some of those claims may be, I wonder whether we solving the problem or looking in the wrong place. But I would hand over to the ED to see if she would like to speak to the issue of the improvements made or direct the appropriate person on the team. Edie?
Right, Mr. Camacho, thank you. And Chairman and members, again, good morning. Just to support what Mr. Camacho was saying, when we analyze the numbers of the number of notices of appeal that we would have received from NIAT over the period 2016 to 2020, that amounted to 977 notices that we got. And out of the 977 notices, we have provided 876 files, Chairman, to the NIAT. At this point, 101 files are still outstanding, and we are committing to the committee to ensuring that those files are submitted to NIAT in the fastest possible time frame. But going back to what my chairman was alluding to, out of the 876 files that would have been submitted, just over 100 matters would have been heard over the same period. So clearly, in our respectful view, it speaks, as you were saying, to a level of staffing issues that may be required to support the tribunal. And I just wanted to go back to Member Morris Julian's point, in that this really, the NIB staffing is very different to that of NIAT, right? So the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal is an independent body, and our interaction, of course, with that body is limited to supporting the tribunal when we receive a notice of appeal. With respect to our structure and our staffing, allow me to say that following the hearing in 2013, we ourselves would have done a little bit more of a comprehensive, holistic review of our structure, and changes were made on our end. So, for example, on about 2015 to 2016 or thereabouts, we felt that the appeals division would have been more appropriately placed in the legal department. So we moved the appeals division from our insurance operations department to our legal department, where we felt it was more appropriately positioned and would lead to greater efficiencies. In addition to that, we have a dedicated appeals unit headed by our executive manager legal services and supported by our manager legal and 2 support staff. Of course, that division itself is supported by other divisions in NIB that would provide the files, etc., and information. Speaking a little bit, Chairman, with respect to the delays that were suggested in the 2013 report, we felt that having reviewed the system and the structure, it has in fact now led to a greater level of efficiencies. And we continue to look at our operations to see how we can even improve upon that. But bearing in mind, Chair, that the NIB is a 49-year-old organization, and at present we have the current document management process is a heavily manual one, and it involves the actual location and retrieval of a physical benefit unit file. So just to give the committee and to put it into context, when a notice of appeal comes from NIAT, it comes to our legal department. A request is made for the file. There must now be the location and the physical retrieval of that file, bearing in mind, of course, that we operate out of 18 locations. The file is provided, it is copied, and we also take the opportunity to provide our case or our position, and then it is submitted to NIAT. So, Chair, we feel confident on this end that the structure that we have in place at this time can support the demands of the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal.
Mrs. Pulaya, I must congratulate you for that impetus that you did from the last 2013 by having this appeals committee that you have there to expedite. So what I'm hearing really is you have improved your system, and this is something to be congratulated. So then the major issue may be the staffing issue from our tribunal. So therefore, but I would still like to get a feedback now from the tribunal in terms of the fact that what are some of the delays? Because if you're now getting files quicker, what are your major constraints? What do you want us to help you to improve? Because we are here to try and get a solution. So I would really like an input from a member of the NIAT to give me that either Mrs. Hassanali or Ms. Cummins, please. Thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I think I'll take this question on behalf of NIAT. I would just, by way of backlog, and treating with the
backlog, I would just like to bring a particular issue to the attention of this committee based on my experience as chair. I was appointed on the 2nd of March 2018. At that time, I was the sole member of the tribunal because the term of the other members had expired since April of 2017. So between that time, April of 2017, and my appointment, of course, there would have been no hearings no sittings of the tribunal. And even with my appointment, the other members of the tribunal were not appointed until August of 2018, sorry. So that will give you an idea of the kind of delay that we're talking about in terms of the appointment of this is from the board, the members' position. And given a period of time for training of the new members, we would have started hearings under the new tribunal in October of 2018. So when we're talking about treating with the backlog, that is one of the major concerns I would like to raise before this committee today, because it is not an isolated incident. It has happened in the past where the tribunal was not able to sit for extended period of time, sometimes for more than 2 years, because the appointments of the members and or the tribunal expired, and it took a long time to have their replacements appointed. So in terms of, and of course, in the meantime, more appeals are being filed, and cases would have been, files would have been sent from the NIB doing their duty to the tribunal. But having no members duly appointed, or having just one member, the chairman, without members, or the members without the chairman, you can see how this will stymie the operation of NIAT. So that is a critical issue, and it has hampered the ability of the tribunal to do its work. And if I may just add one quick thing as well, Mr. Chairman. Once we had our board, our chairman members and the chairman duly appointed and trained, we were able to achieve quite a lot in my term. And in fact, the year 2019, we were able to hear and decide on the largest number of cases going back, I would say, the past 6-7 years, because we had our members and we were able to have regular hearings. So apart from the issues of staffing, the issue of the appointment of the members would have to be something that must be taken into account in terms of the efficiency of NIAT. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cummins. I think I'm a former independent senator. I must say I welcome you again for hearing your input. So we are hearing about staffing, office staffing that could be provided from the Ministry of Finance, as well as your own members may not have been appointed together in tandem. That leaves a sort of disruption and people having a time to settle in office, to settle in. So at this stage, do you have the full complement of the staffing, like from in South, in terms of the members of the tribunal now, not office staff, which Ministry of Finance could probably give? What about your members of the tribunal? Do you find that in the past, the members were coming to meetings, or were they being absent? Was it a challenge to get them? You see, I think your last hearing was in July 2020. But what I'm saying now with the virtual hearing and Zoom platforms, I'm thinking this could now be a way that we can go forward with quicker hearings. So a member from Tobago might sit in this, in your tribunal hearings. And I'm thinking, so this is something we can go forward. But have members of your tribunal been forthcoming in attending these meetings?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think we've been very fortunate during my tenure to have members who are very committed to the work of the tribunal. I have never had an issue with members not attending, and if for whatever reason they aren't able to attend on a particular day, we have sufficient notice and we are able to have a quorum. So we've never been able to not have a sitting because we aren't able to make a quorum.
So I congratulate you again for having good members, because that was one of the critiques of the previous report, whereby members were not coming forward to meetings and meetings had to be canceled. And it was even mentioned in the report that after 3 meetings, if you're absent, you would be removed. And it was mentioned in the report that sometimes members would just come to 1 meeting and skip 2 and come to 1. But again, we have now reached a better level of efficiency in terms of your staff being on board. And in terms of the virtual here, and I think one of our members wanted to go there. Yeah, I think member Webster Roy, I think you wanted to explore the idea about the virtual hearings that could be something very beneficial, because I'm been seeing moves in other governmental departments that, in the courts, in the AG's office, and then thinking that somehow if we could develop that. So I don't know if member Roy would like to pose any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I had my hands up because I wanted to ask the NIAT, in terms of the tribunal now, do we have your full complement of members? I'm not sure if I heard you answer that question when it was asked by the chairman.
Yes, Ms. Roy, we do have a full complement. The caveat is chairman comes down on. Are you hearing me?
I'm not hearing you properly.
I'm saying that we currently have a full complement of members, but that my term as chair ends on the 1st of March 2021, so that hopefully as of now.
I missed the last part of what you were saying, but I heard that you said that your term of office will come to an end at the end of March, right?
Beginning of March.
Beginning of March. Okay. Another question, from your experience looking on the inside, what would you recommend to improve the efficiency of the tribunal? I know the chairman would have mentioned maybe looking at virtual meetings, but what else can you recommend so we have greater efficiency?
Well, in that case, I would like to refer to some of the recommendations we had made before.
Not hearing you, breaking up.
I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay.
Probably seek some assistance with our technician or IT people.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, so what I was saying is that I agree with some of the recommendations that have been made previously to have a deputy chairman be appointed, because in the event that a chairman is unable to meeting, that will not cause a disruption in the operation or in the ability of the tribunal to sit. And also, if you think in terms of the number of cases and the small society in which we live, it is always possible that the chairman may have conflict of interest in a matter that comes before the tribunal, and he or she is unable to appear for whatever reason. And so in a case like that, with the status quo, that matter will not be still not that chairman. But if you have a deputy chairman who is able to take up or act in the absence of the chairman, or in case the chairman excuse themselves for whatever reason, then that would assist in the continuity of the meeting. So that, I think, is one of the solutions I would make.
The NIB TT would have indicated that you all have to work with physical files. Does that in any way hamper your ability to work faster and work more effectively and more efficiently in any way?
I think in terms of operations, if we have electronic electronic filing system for me getting case papers to the members electronically. That would be a great improvement because as it is, case papers have to be delivered to each member. And if you think in terms of 15 cases approximately per sitting, so that's 15 files that have to be physically delivered to each member prior to a sitting.
And this question would be for both NIB, TT, and NIAT. What steps are being taken to move towards digitization of files and also file sharing across all offices?
So, Chairman, if I can go first in terms of the response. In fact, Chair, that was one of the recommendations that the NIB came today with, in that for all the remaining files that we have notices of appeals for, we are actually prepared to digitize those and to submit those digitally via email or so, depending on the platform. To NIAT, if NIAT is prepared to receive those and if that will in any way support the efficiencies of their operations. From an NIB end, though, in addition to that, we are also moving digitally, and that we have embarked upon our ICT project, which will see the transformation and digitization of all our records and all our files in this strategic period, which is Strategic Plan 2024. We are right now at the cusp of engaging a provider to support us on that. So, but even before that, even at this time, we are prepared to support NIAT and commence the digitization of all those files and submit those to them for all the remaining files, Chair.
So then NIAT could probably welcome this assistance to get their online platform going in a more efficient way. So I want to just bring up one issue there. In terms of the office closure in South, are there plans to have like if you're looking at this virtual platform, I'm thinking that with the South closure in South, if there's some other means that we can have a virtual hearing from there. And Tobago, is there any problems in Tobago in terms of any hearings in Tobago? Because with the online platform now, I'm thinking those things could be solved. Are there any plans for the NIAT to follow through on those areas, San Fernando, South, and also Tobago?
Thank you, Chair. We have been discussing that very issue with the BPS, Ms. Lachman, and the Executive Director, the Senior Research Officer, seeing that the COVID has caused a disruption in the actual way NIAT would usually hold a tribunal and have everything in person. We are moving towards doing digital hearings, but that is a conversation we would have to have with NIB as well. And because the chairman's term is coming to an end very soon, March the 1st will be here with us very soon. We are hoping that the new chairman will be installed and we'll be able to not only continue the conversation, but begin that process to facilitate Tobago. At the moment, we don't have many Tobago matters on hand, as well as the South appeals. Because our biggest concern for South would be the fact that we are being accommodated by the Ministry of Labor, but it means going in physically into the ministry and using their facilities, which would encompass not only their conference room, but all the amenities, everything that we have to use, we have to share with the Ministry of Labor, and that is what we're trying to avoid. So the online hearing is something that we are actively pursuing right now.
Well, I realize you were squatting in South, but in another office. But what I'm thinking, if you really go online, this problem will be solved. So I'm thinking, I have great fear now what I'm hearing that your chairperson would be the meeting office in March. But from now to March, how hard is it with the help from the Ministry of Finance, also probably liaising with information and technology, as well as the input from the NIBTT with their help? How, I mean, could we have like a timeline to say before this chairman leaves, this chairperson leaves, you can actually set up this online hearing, which I'm thinking with what has been going on in other ministries may not be so difficult to do. So could you try and see if you can probably, in a sense, give me some kind of assurance with the timeline that this could be done? Two, if the post is being, again, the post is coming to an end, has the relevant personnel be informed of such that, either the chairman continue or a new chairman be appointed? Just a reminder to the relevant persons that the president, that this post will be coming to an end soon. And we may need to look into filling the post expeditiously or continuing our present chair.
Chair, if I may take your last question. Yes, Her Excellency was notified on December 2nd of last year that my term comes to an end on March 1st, and it was my decision not to seek reappointment. And I know the office of the president is actively seeking a replacement to take up the position of chairman going forward.
Yeah, sure.
Chairman.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Chairman, this is Sarah Bablal from the NIB. I just wanted to support some of the comments of the NIAT and the registrar as well as the chairman in that once immediately after the onset of COVID in March, once there was some direction about how we can resume, the NIAT and the registrar did engage the NIB about the possibilities for virtual hearings, and there was an exchange of ideas about how that could be done. The virtual hearings did not go off, but we were able to at least meet once in person in July, and the NIB would want to go on record to commit to participating and cooperating with any sort of virtual platform in the interest of having hearings resume. Also in a way that meets the needs of the appellants, because they would also have to have some capabilities as well. In addition, I just also wanted to comment on the NIAT chairman's earlier comments about the hearings. We were very also happy in 2019. There was almost a record number of hearings under the chairman's stewardship, and we had discussions about possible ways to projectize this backlog and strategies as to, well, how could we possibly have the appeals listed and heard, because we know it's going to be a task, so to speak, to get on top of it. But we are NIBs, we know the challenge ahead, and we are committed to being available for hearings at the frequency that is needed going forward, and if those hearings need to be virtual as well. So we are looking forward to that opportunity and to hear more about that if NIAT does have the capability to do it.
Thank you. I would like to look at the question to Representative of NIAT, where your submissions that you had given this committee stated that with regard to this system used to prioritize appeals, because remember, appeals have been there long, and you had mentioned there's no criteria applied, and I think that was on question 15, 16 on page 9. So I wanted to ask you, what are their reasons for not having any criteria to prioritize the appeals? And do you plan to have some sort of system for at least developing a criteria? Because remember, if persons have their appeals for a long period, it seems that some people may actually die before their appeals are held. Some elderly individuals waiting for some sort of recourse. So could you please direct that answer to that question? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I assumed as registrar in 2014, there was already a backlog. And when we resumed hearings under the new chairman in 2016, we would have had appeals coming in over that period to add to the backlog. So one of the discussions prior to the resumption of hearings was that we deal with appeals coming in during closer to the appointment of the chairman. But we recognized as well in that discussion that we couldn't leave the old matters to just languish. We had to deal with the old as well as the new matters that were coming in. So NIAT doesn't have a process that I've seen to select matters that would come before the tribunal. In selecting, I would look at the particular matter, whether it's from the backlog or from the current term of that chair and members. And once all of the pertinent information required for that appeal is on file, that would determine what is selected. Among the backlog matters, though, we realized that some matters had been settled and we didn't have any notice of it. So we were going through the older files in the backlog to address a lot of the issues that we were encountering. So those that had to be brought before the tribunal, we had some that had started under the former chair and had been adjourned for whatever reason. And those matters we brought back to the tribunal because we wanted to have those matters resolved, because we're dealing with a lot of elderly persons, a lot of infirm persons. So we are not sure if the persons are alive still, if they're still interested in pursuing the matters. So all those things are taken into consideration when we have to select the matters that come before the tribunal.
Thank you. I recognize Member Lachpedial.
Chair, thank you. There's a mention in the submission from NIAT about a case management system that had been proposed sometime in 2019. I also noticed that some of the matters, the method of disposal is that it's deemed to be a matter of mixed law and fact. So my question is, one, whether that proposal for a case management system, does that require some legislative intervention, or is it something that the tribunal, working together in tandem with the board and the ministry, can implement as an administrative type of arrangement? Because, of course, that's the way that all judicial and quasi-judicial bodies are operating right now, with some sort of a case management process and procedure. It might streamline and it might address what the chairman is speaking about in terms of fast-tracking matters, prioritizing, etc. And coming out of that, I would like to know at what point in time would a determination be made that a matter is mixed fact and law? How long does it take? Because, of course, if the tribunal isn't able to address its mind to an issue because it's mixed fact and law, strictly a legal point, and how soon is that determination communicated to the appellant? Because the appellant's recourse might then be in judicial review, which obviously has time factors involved and so on. So I'm concerned about that determination, at what point it's made, who makes that determination, and how long it takes, and whether or not a case management type structure, if it is implemented. No details were given here about the proposal that came from the National Insurance Contributors, Claimants and Appellants. I guess that's some sort of an association that deals with matters. But can you tell us a little bit more about the case management proposal, whether there was any merit to it, and if it's something that you all would be willing to pursue?
The case management proposal, it is administrative for the most part. And we had that association national insurance contributors, claimants, and appellants. They had reached out to NIAT to assist us in this process, but we were never able to get further than discussions. So NIAT has been doing its own internal case management to an extent. The files that were deemed to be mixed law and fact and out of time, we have been writing these appellants and asking that they have their matters withdrawn from the tribunal. That has not yielded as much results as we would have liked, because more often than not, the persons still want to have their matters brought before the tribunal.
Okay, so getting back to the question, when exactly would that determination be made? Is it that you have a process where you vet the appeal, the notice of appeal, and you make a determination? So you have to wait for all the files to come from NIB and look at it and then make that determination. And if it is that they don't agree to withdraw, it's open to you, I suppose, to dispose of the appeal by way of saying it doesn't fall for our remit, and you would have to communicate your decision somehow to them in writing, right?
Ms. Lashmidial, if I may take that question. At this point in time, what the tribunal's approach is that, so when an objection is raised or an issue is raised by the NIB, for example, that this is a matter that is of mixed facts and law and is outside of the jurisdiction of the tribunal itself determines whether it has jurisdiction in the matter. But I take your point, because it has happened that persons would have been waiting years to have their matter come before the tribunal only to find out that the tribunal doesn't have jurisdiction. So in terms of case management system, I would certainly like to see that process be included in terms of determining whether it is in fact a matter of mixed facts and law much, much earlier in the process. And I think that in a case like that, the tribunal would need to have counsel to advise it, because NIB has its counsel advising it. So the tribunal will need to have its own counsel advising it whether this is in fact a matter that is mixed fact and law early in the process, so that appellants can be informed and they can be guided accordingly. As it is, there is no system to sift out those matters early in the stage, early in the process.
So, barring a objection to your jurisdiction from the NIB, it would remain. Let's just say the appeal gets into the queue, and when it comes to the attention of the tribunal, you then make that decision. Do you have access to the resources, such as through the ministry, for a legal opinion, or is it with it? Do you all have to brief counsel to give an opinion to you? What's the process?
Sorry, we don't have access to our own counsel on matters like this. No, we don't. So we do have to make a determination as the tribunal whether it is something that falls within our jurisdiction, and we would certainly like a determination to be made earlier in the process for the benefit of appellants.
And when that determination is in fact made, at whichever point it is made in the process as it stands right now, you communicate that in writing to the appellant and inform them that you are, for want of a better word, dismissing their appeal, or that you are informing them that it needs to be dealt with elsewhere?
Yes, and it is made actually in a hearing setting, where the appellants, both sides get an opportunity to make submissions as to whether the matter does or does not fall within the jurisdiction of the tribunal. And we make a finding, and yes, a decision is made formally, and the appellant is informed in writing.
Okay. The other question, I just backtracking a little bit. When my first question was on the legislative proposals, and I heard about we heard that they wanted to deal, with the positions and so on, and the creation of deputy chairman and all of that. But apart from that, could the tribunal tell us about other legislative measures that they feel might assist, apart from the creation of additional posts and and whatnot. Is there anything else legislatively that needs to be done that you think would help with the operations of the NIATs?
I would certainly like to suggest that the time period for appeals be extended. Right now, the appellants have 6 months to appeal. And very often, by the time they even are aware that they have the option to appeal, half of that time may have gone. And even if they are aware early on, there are certain things that they would need to put in place in terms of getting their documentations and so on before they can submit the matter to the tribunal.
Right, just stick up in there. Stick up in. Can you just tell me, because I've had this issue before and I've encountered it. You said that by the time they're aware of the need to appeal, half the time has gone. Wouldn't time begin to run when you become aware of the decision that's made and when you have to come before the appeal? Because I've had this issue from both the, I've seen it crop up on both the side of the NIB as well as the NIAT, that somehow you all start counting time from when you make a decision and not when the person becomes aware of it, which legally speaking is incorrect as far as I am concerned. And I think there's a substantial case law on that point in judicial review and otherwise. So when the person becomes aware of it, doesn't the 6 month period begin running from there? Isn't that how the tribunal would deal with these matters and start counting the 6 month time period?
We count 6 months from legislatively, how the legislation is structured right now. The 6 months starts to run from the decision of the National Insurance Board.
Well, you see,
stated in the legislation.
Well, yeah, legislation is also meant to be read with a tinge of interpretation. I can't possibly see if the person isn't aware of the decision. You just said that by the time the person becomes aware of the decision, sometimes half the time is gone. If it is that the person isn't made aware on the same day that the decision is made, the 6 months cannot begin to run.
No, actually what I said was that by the time they are aware that they have the option to appeal, because some persons don't know that they have a right to appeal or an opportunity.
All right. But in any event, when someone is advised of a decision, they also advise, from my recollection, they would also be advised of the right of appeal. Is that something that's done by the board?
Yes, it is. Typically, they will advise the person of their right to appeal, but it is not always done. And besides, I think members of the public are supposed to be advised of their right to appeal and the procedure for submitting their appeals, for lodging their appeal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that information should really accompany the decision.
Yes, so the accompanying decision, they'll tell I've seen letters where they tell the appellant, the claimant, you have the right to appeal,
right?
Tribunal, but they aren't told how that is supposed to be done. That they have to submit their notice of appeal at the box, at NIB offices and all of that. The procedure is not explained to them. So what I'm saying is, oftentimes appellants aren't aware of the full context in which they are to exercise this right to appeal, and so that's looking for more time for them to be able to.
Right. So, and you think also perhaps some more information accompanying the decision might be useful in terms of getting people to operate with it. You must have a time frame, whether it's 6 months or a year or how much ever it is. You the fact is that perhaps the provision of information ought to be mandatory in terms of assistance with the appeal, and maybe some more
guidance to appellants, because they often
and maybe something like I don't know. It really ought not to be for the NIB to be offering assistance to people who wish to appeal. I mean, they can advise them of the right when they communicate the decision, but perhaps the NIAT itself perhaps could use some resources to assist, whether it's a help desk or something practical then to assist with people lodging their appeals in a timely manner. You think that would be useful?
Yes, I do, and that is something that Ms. Asinali and I actually discussed, particularly in terms of maybe like pre-hearing or a conference with appellants to let them know exactly what the scenario with respect to their appeal is. And of course, in that case, if that is in conjunction with your case management system, where the tribunal is able to be advised that this is a matter of mixed factor law or it's outside of your jurisdiction, then they'll be able to inform the appellant or potential appellant through this process of a help desk that, look, this matter can't go forward for X, Y, and Z reason, and you would need to get counsel to take it in another direction.
Yeah, so the entire case management proposal probably is something that you may wish to have all of this incorporated into then.
100%, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, all. Hi, Fayed Khan here from the National Insurance Board. Just to add some more information to the discussion regarding the rights to appeal and what's provided to the customers of the NIB. We do issue disallowance notices to our to all of our claimants who would have not been successful, and we do put information with respect to their rights to appeal. But we take the feedback that perhaps we could provide some more information in collaboration with NIAT. We're willing to take a phone number, an email address, some sort of contact information that we could put on our letters to our claimants. So we accept the feedback and we're willing to support.
Could I ask a question? How is NIB still communicating its decisions via regular mail, paper mail, or do you all have a system now whereby you utilize email and so on to communicate the decision to the claimants?
The majority of our customers actually, on our records, we don't have email addresses for them, so our correspondence is still done via regular mail.
Okay, so I mean, that comes back to the challenge that I was indicating, whereby sometimes, I don't know, physical mail can get lost, it can be delayed. With COVID, I know, for example, you would have had a delay. So the actual pinpointing the time that a person becomes aware of a decision at this point might be a bit challenging, both for appeals and other legal recourse as well.
Yeah, and Chairman, this is Sarah Bablal, NIB joining in again. That has become an issue on a number of occasions where you have the date NIB made the decision, then you have the date the appellant receives or becomes aware of the decision. But the appeals regulation does give some leeway to the chairman to consider the appellant's reason for his late submission. In my attendances at the hearing, if an appellant says, well, I have your notice dated 3-4 months ago, but I actually received it, we've been amenable to, we don't object to it being out of time. And there is that, the chairman does have the jurisdiction to say, this is good reason for why your appeal is late. So that has happened, but we know that putting some more information into the decision notices can assist an appellant in coming in within the time, as opposed to trying to explain why I didn't meet the time.
Okay, so therefore, what I'm gathering is that the virtual, knowledge out there should be something that I think the NIB has mentioned that they are already on par with that. But I think it was the UK Parliament actually. They now have something called pension dashboards that they were exploring, that person's information, like how much contributions they have, when they go to retire, what they might get. And it's out there for the public to access that information. So that's probably something we may have to think about in the NIB in the future. I would like also at this stage to
Chairman, could we quickly respond to that? Fayed, please.
So I know that our chair would have, and executive director would have spoken a bit about the technological changes that we are currently embarking on as part of this strategic period. That exactly is one of the items on our requirements for the platform, right? So a customer portal where customers can come in and take a look at their own contributions and their projected benefits at retirement. Similarly, a portal would exist for employers to be able to look at their contribution history and calculate their contributions that are due. So a number of web-enabled services are on the radar for the NIBTT, and we are very close to engaging someone to provide the service to us.
Thank you. I'm getting some very good news this morning. You're making me extremely happy this morning to hear how far we're progressing. But I would like to ask one question. The NIBTT has implemented control mechanism to reduce fraud. You had given that submission and has developed claims guidelines to reduce the incidences of defective claims. That was in page 7 of, I think, your response to us. Could you please describe the control mechanism NIBTT has implemented to reduce fraud? And secondly, what are some of the key components of the claims guidelines which aim to reduce the incidence of defective claims?
So, Chairman, the NIBTT would have implemented a comprehensive fraud control framework, a fraud policy, and the claims adjudication is just one small component of it, right? So our framework at the NIBTT includes policies, procedures. We have a dedicated unit right now that treats with internal, external controls and possibility of fraud. In terms of your specific question with respect to the claims adjudication process, there are some additional documents that we now request prior to us determining a claim, and checks that are done as it relates to proving employment, proving someone's maternity claim is indeed valid by contacting relevant medical institutions, etc. And in terms of the analytics and so on, we do have in-house capabilities, and so all in all, the controls are in place right now, and we have implemented this successfully since 2019, and it's all for the benefits of all stakeholders to the National Insurance Board.
Thank you. I'd like to direct a question to the tribunal members. In your submission, you stated that currently there are no benchmarks for the operations of the NIAT. That is page 5, I think you had given that comment. So in the absence of guiding principles, what tools are utilized to measure the effectiveness of your organization in the daily operations? And has the tribunal considered establishing key performance indicators?
Chairman, I don't know about you, but I am not seeing them online.
Chairman, yeah, I'm not seeing the tribunal anymore. I think they may have gotten disconnected.
Chairman, we're having some connectivity issues. We got bumped off a short while ago, so I'm presuming the same thing happened with them.
Well, Chair, while we wait on them, could I pose a question to the Ministry of Finance then? Until we
proceed.
Right, sure. Yeah, Ministry of Finance, PS Lutchman. With respect to training and allocation of resources for training, one of the things that I find challenging in the public service is that as soon as people are trained, you have a rotation, and you mentioned rotation of staff, but you also have persons on the tribunal as well that may need training, but then you don't have continuity. Is there a training plan, and has the ministry allocated resources for training? And what does the ministry see, or what can the ministry do to ensure that training is really being given to persons who would remain with either in an administrative capacity or in capacity as a member of the tribunal, so that the training is put to best use? And what type of training have you all facilitated for members of the tribunal and for the administrative staff in the past, let's say, 2 to 3 years?
Through you, Chairman. In this year's budgetary allocation, we would have included an amount for training under NIAT, and I suppose that would have been in anticipation of the new members coming in. So when a new chairman or new members come in, they are required to be trained, and the registrar would coordinate that training. So the chairman, members, and NIAT staff, the staff of the secretariat, they are trained when they come in. I concur with your concern about continuity. Once they have staff rotation, the staff would have to be trained. We have put in place, well, the ministry, has under its vote the NIAT allocation, and as I said, we have an allocation for training, which can be utilized.
P.S. Lachman, quick question. The administrative staff, that's where we use the word assigned, is it that they are actually officially seconded to NIAT, or is it just an arrangement whereby they're placed there? Is it an official secondment in the public service? Does it work that way?
I believe the staff members are staff members of the Ministry of Finance. They are not seconded. The position of registrar resides with the NIAT.
Right. But the rest of the administrative staff are just ministry staff that are assigned to work there. They aren't actually officially seconded to NIAT.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
No, so there's no secondment.
No, okay.
At this stage, I just wanted to mention the fact that I was fortunate to get an email from members outside, the consultants outside, external consultants who participated in the 2013 inquiry. This email is from Mr. Herbert B. Dolsing, Mr. Ramnath Ramcharita, who actually worked as a regulator before and has his private consultancy, and also Mrs. Nisha Dolsing Jogi. So they were kind enough to put some recommendations that they think, since the 2013 hearing. And part of their recommendations, I don't know if it was already fulfilled by the NIB, but one of the recommendations that was made is to reestablish a claims review committee at NIB to lighten the caseload of NIAT. Is that existing, or is it a good suggestion? Could I get a feedback from that?
So, Chair, following the 2003 sitting of this committee, we carefully considered the recommendations that were made, and in fact, probably only one would have been directly would have been a direct recommendation to the NIB, and that would have been for the establishment of a case management system or an appeals management conference to review all appeals, etc. And while that in itself did not actually happen, because that would have required the support of the NIAT, what the NIB did do in 2014, commencing in 2014-2015, we actually went ahead to initiate a process whereby appellants could have requested a review of their claims. And we saw approximately 750 appellants were invited to make an appointment and to review their cases, depending on whether it was a matter of fact, etc. That we saw some success with it, in that the approval was we did get approval from the Ministry of Finance, the permanent secretary for this initiative, and coming out of that initiative, approximately 32% of the outstanding appeals were in fact withdrawn by the appellants. Over time, though, the facility has actually not been accessed, and it is more accessed now on a very limited basis over the few years. At this point, we have very little, if any, persons who would have come forward to actually utilize this process. So we have given the appellants chair starting back in 2015, and coming out of the recommendations made, we did provide the appellants with an opportunity of coming to us to have that case reviewed, as opposed to going to the route of litigation.
So it was offered, but yeah, you still getting some sort of resistance there from the...
But yes, it was offered. There was some success, and it is still an available facility, Chair. It has been publicized. It is on our website. We remain open, ready, and willing to support the review process, and to see how we can improve upon it.
Sure. Well, my other question would have been, was it advertised? But you have answered that.
It is on our website, yes.
Another recommendation coming from these esteemed consultants outside was establish a 3-month deadline for NIB to hand over all information regarding an appellant's case, or the NIAT will rule in favor of the appellant. Now, I think I had gone through a similar motion here, but then you have already mentioned that your limits of sending, your time limits have now improved, and at least you're working on that. So I think somehow we are heading in the right direction in terms of your providing the information about the appellant's case, right? And another recommendation actually was cases presented to the NIAT are only allowed to be adjourned once, after which a ruling has to be made. So I think this is an answer really for the NIAT, the tribunal, but unfortunately they are not here, because the consultants found that backlogs occur when there are too many adjournments of the same case. If there are only a specific number of cases allotted to a particular hearing, and the committee adjourns, half of them goes to the next hearing. So this is one of the recommendations made by the team here, right? And also the increase in the frequency of hearings temporarily to clear up the current backlog of cases, which I think, is something that I think the chair of NIAT had mentioned that you're working towards this. So this letter will be communicated to all to get some comments to see if somehow that can help us in our overall assessment of this and improvements that is needed.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, Mrs. Hassan Ali wanted to.
Yes, so
I think NIAT.
Yes,
NIAT is not. Right.
Yes, thank you. We had some technical challenges, but I wanted to respond to your last comment about the adjournment of matters. That is, I take responsibility for that in terms of my tenure, and what I would say to that is, appellants who come before the tribunal are very often unrepresented. Most of them, about 80% of them, are unrepresented either by counsel or a national insurance consultant. Whereas the National Insurance Board usually has 2 to 3 qualified attorneys on, representing their interests. So I tend to err in favor of the appellants in terms of giving them opportunities to get the information that they need, whether it is witnesses, documents from their employers, and of course we cannot compel any witnesses or persons to appear before the tribunal. So oftentimes appellants would need time to build their case, and they may not be aware of some of the information, the kind of information that they would need to bring before the tribunal to bolster their cases. So I, as chairman, I had taken the view that I would give appellants not an unreasonable amount of time, but enough time as possible to get their cases together, and that may warrant, and from time to time has warranted, adjournment of the matters. And we've also had requests for adjournment on the part of NIB, who may have ongoing investigations in matters that come before the tribunal. So I just wanted to make that input. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we may be about to wrap up this session, and I want to ask any members of my committee, do you have any other burning questions, any questions you'd want to address to the members present here from the various
Chair, yeah, I have two questions.
Sure.
One for NIAT, about the emailing the notices of appeal. How has that, you indicated that you've been, especially with overseas applicants, we know that sometimes we have a lot of persons who may have migrated, but they are entitled or they make claims to national insurance, to NIB, and they would want to perhaps approach the NIAT if they're not happy about the decision. So how has that emailing system of emailing the notices of appeal, how has that been working? Is there any room for further improvements with the lodging of your notice of appeal electronically, particularly with COVID and so on right now? So that's the first question. I just wanted to, if you could give us some feedback on that.
The notices of appeal can come to us electronically or the physical document. And that has been so ever since I assumed as registrar here in 2014. We've had more so during the 2020 period because of COVID, having more nationals living here submitting their appeals that way. The challenge with that, though, is that the system requires that the appeal document must be signed by the appellant, must have a signature. So even when we consider doing an electronic version of the notice of appeal, to have the appeals come to us electronically, have them fill online and resubmit to us, it must have that appellant's signature on it and a date. Those things are important. So we have not figured out any other way to do that to date other than to have the appellants, wherever they are, at home or abroad, download the actual application, fill it out, scan it, and send it back to us. And that is what we've been using primarily as far as the electronic version of the appeal application is concerned.
And the signed, scanned document is accepted?
Is accepted by us and by the NIA.
Right, okay.
Chairman, if I may, is it possible to have an editable document so that people could electronically just affix the signature, date it, and send it back electronically to avoid them having to find somewhere with a scanner or whatever? Just a thought. I mean, in the modern world now, one would think you could affix the electronic signature, the legislation permits, and you don't have to go through print, sign, scan, send back.
Subject to correction, subject to correction, Chair, I think that the legislative requirement in law for public authorities to accept electronic signatures isn't fully proclaimed as yet. So that might be the challenge that that you might have with that position. But I'm certain it's doable with the
technology.
Well, once the legislation is fully implemented. So, could I ask if the NIB accepts electronic signatures or any sort of electronic submission of documents apart from signing, scanning, and emailing back? Is there any sort of electronic form in place? I know there's a form you can request your contribution statements, but that doesn't have to be signed.
Yeah, so that's correct. We do have an online request for contribution statement, but it's just a request saying that you want your statement. And otherwise, we have not gone online claims. So, and the only other online feature we have is online payments, where you just upload your documents regarding your contributions for the month. So we haven't gone that way as yet either.
Chairman, if I may, to Ms. Rashmidial's comment, I don't know, is there some timeline for the actual, is it proclamation you used, the word, of the rest of the act to allow for it? I mean.
That's outside of my remit. but I have no idea. But I know that the law was I know that there is a law in place. I don't know how many parts of it have been proclaimed, but I can't speak to the rest of the proclamation of it. I could look at I'll look it up and see how much has been proclaimed.
Well, at this stage, I'd like to thank members for their contribution, and I think there are no further questions on our part from committee members, I understand. So at this stage, I would like to get closing remarks, brief closing remarks from Mrs. Sharon Hassan Ali, the Registrar of the National Appeals Tribunal.
Thank you, Chairman. I do apologize for us being off camera. It is interfering with our feed.
I thought you were hiding from us, actually.
No, it actually kicked us off the Zoom for a moment. Thank you to everyone that has participated today and assisted, has listened to the needs of NIAT. We are a small unit. We are trying our best with the resources that we have to facilitate the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, those that reside here and those that reside abroad. And we are hopeful that with the implementations that we are asking for, that we can continue to do the work of the tribunal and move this backlog. The next time we come before the next registrar that comes before the JSC, perhaps we'll be able to say that there is no backlog and they are more current and up to date than we are at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I say it's small unit, but we are hoping, we can expand it a bit, get your additional staff and assistance, that will offer. And at this stage, could Mrs. Niala Prasad Pulaya, Executive Director of the NIBTT, give closing remarks.
Chairman, thank you very much. And yes, I just wanted to share that we at the NIB, we're happy to have been here today. We recognize the National Insurance Appeals Tribunal to be a key and important stakeholder. And of course, we pledge our willingness to continue to support and collaborate and partner with NIAT in an effort to improve upon what we do and whom we serve, because we recognize that will only redound to the benefit of our 200,000 plus beneficiaries that we continue to serve in this country. In addition to continuing to and be willing to partner and collaborate, Chair, we are also willing to go the route digitally in terms of hearings, and we will be reaching out to NIAT in terms of how we can support with those digital hearings. Thirdly, we are committing to submitting all the remaining files in the shortest possible time frame, and we're also willing to do that digitally in a format that is approved by NIAT. We have committed here, Chair, to amending our letters of disallowances that will allow for a little bit more information to be placed so that the appellant can have just a bit more information in terms of the route that he or she can take. And as I would have said before, Chair, the review process that we initiated in 2015 will remain open and available to all our appellants. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And as I mentioned before, I commend you for your trust in the electronic world to assist, and also your promise to assist the members of NIAT to their venture. At this stage, Mrs. Jennifer Lutchman, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, there's a lot on your hands really to try and push in some stuff. So I would love to hear some closing remarks from you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We will be committed to continue to support NIAT in administratively, and we will continue to pursue the strengthening of the organization structure. A lot of recommendations have been made in this committee sitting as well as in the previous committee sitting, and we will continue to pursue those. We'll also commit to continue the pursuit of the legislative amendments that would allow for NIAT to function efficiently and effectively. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And so at this stage, I'm very happy to be here today to hear what, another trust that we are going to help our population, the persons who are in need of pensions, and to expedite their appeals. And I'm saying that I think if we all push together, we can probably have a timeline where the different stakeholders can really try to get together to ease that backlog. And this stage, I would like to thank the officials of the NIAT, the NIBTT, and the Ministry of Finance for your contribution in today's proceedings. I'd like to thank the committee members who participated and for this virtual hearing. Also the staff of the Office of Parliament for their procedural and logistical support, and the viewing and listening audience who actually tuned into this to get some idea of what's happening in terms of the pension. So I thank you all, and I declare that this is the end of the hearing. I'd like to adjourn. Thank you.